Rocksteady was reportedly behind the decision to make Suicide Squad a live service game. This is something I've mentioned hundreds of times at this point, and it's based off of reporting that Jason Schreier did like a year ago. And it basically is just that everybody wants to fall back on the idea that this was big baddies at Warner Brothers that forced Rocksteady to make this game that they didn't actually want to make, and that's not actually the case. The evidence suggests and points to the fact that Warner Brothers certainly was happy to get another live service game, but that Rocksteady themselves were the ones that reached out and wanted to do a live service game. Now, why that is, because a lot of us are like, why on earth would they ever want to do a live service game? Like, what could they possibly get from that? And I mean, honestly, I'm sure that they probably get like kickbacks, the high revenue the games do. The owners of the studio might make more money, get better bonuses. So there could be stuff like that. And then the other piece of it too is like, the reason live service games are so successful is because they make a lot of money, and because the reason they make a lot of money is because people play them and people enjoy them. So it very well could be that the team over at Rocksteady just frankly liked live service games and wanted to make one of their own, and thought that if anybody could do it well, it would be us. We're Rocksteady. We made the Batman Arkham games. Of course we can figure it out. Kind of aged badly, but you know, that's a separate issue. As you see in the article, so the live service model was the source of many Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's fans' complaints. I don't know if they were fans about the game when it was revealed and during its closed alpha period, leading to middling to low review scores on launch. Players noted that during the alpha test period that the moment-to-moment action was sometimes fun, but the game overall was marred by a ton of grinding required to unlock many of its unique items or cosmetics. The other issue, and I would say the core issue, is that it's just a bad live service game. It's grindy, sure, but there's only like 2.5 hours of content in the entire game, and that lasts about 10 hours through the campaign, if you can even call it that. And after that, it's just the same 3 missions through the Elseworlds in the end game. Like, normally the end game is like, okay, you grinded and you did the main story for 50 hours or 100 hours. Now you get into the end game when you can really start to fine tune your build. And that's when normally the game gets good. Like Monster Hunter really gets good after the story. You know, it's Monster Hunter. It's not like a traditional story, but after you get past the final encounter, and you know, the DLC will open up if you haven't finished that yet. But once you start going through those master ranked fights, like that's when the game gets really, really good. With Suicide Squad, it's just the opposite. And Monster Hunter, I guess it depends on how you define live service, but I guess it technically is, even though it does have a lot of DLC. I don't know how you would phrase that, but all told, it's just a bad live service game, and that's the bigger problem at the end of the day. So they go on. While many blamed Warner Brothers for the sudden shift in direction for the Arkhamverse, a recent earnings call from the publisher confirms that leadership at Rocksteady were the ones who ultimately made the call to turn Suicide Squad into a live service game. The report, which came from Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav and was reported on by Jason Schreier, seems to confirm that the publisher gave Rocksteady some degree of choice in the matter, and Rocksteady's bosses gravitated towards the live service angle themselves. You can see Jason reported on this during the earnings call, specifically saying, on the Warner Brothers Discovery earnings call this morning, CEO David Zaslav said that their quarter's financials took a hit due to the disappointing release of Suicide Squad, the newest game from Rocksteady, which is true. While it's unclear who specifically at Rocksteady made such a decision, co-founders Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker left the studio in 2022. It was like December of 2022. It was very, very late. Shortly after the game entered full development, they left? I'm pretty sure it was in full development for longer than that, but I don't know. Which has led some speculation regarding their role in it. Since they were the main heads of the studio when the game began development, some believe they were aware that the direction would be unpopular and left to avoid public backlash, though this is purely speculation. It is certainly weird. I remember when this news first broke that they were leaving, it just came out as really, really odd. They issued press releases and stuff, and at that time, they were saying they were leaving to go pursue other things. We now know that they were going off to make a new studio, and that studio has been founded in, I think, also London, relatively close to Rocksteady. And my understanding, at least from LinkedIn posts, is that a good number of people from Rocksteady have gone over to work at that new studio. So when somebody asks in chat and they're like, do you think that they're going to do another Batman Arkham game? Like, honestly, if Warner Brothers was going to hand it to somebody, it'd probably make more sense to hand it to the studio that Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill founded, but maybe they want to go off and do something totally different and new. I don't know. But it seems like Rocksteady, the team that's there, is a team specifically built out for live service games, and anybody that was doing single player stuff has moved on to that new studio from the original founders. Yeah, despite being set within the Batman Arkham universe, the always online looter shooter approach with a battle pass system failed to impress fans of the games, especially since it was the first full-fledged Arkhamverse title since 2015's Arkham Knight. Zaslav allegedly referred to, quote, the disappointing release of Suicide Squad, end quote, in the same earnings call, citing how the game has not performed on the level the company was expecting. Yeah, the controversy surrounding the game did not stop there either, as fans also took issue with the game's treatment of Batman in what was assumed to be the last time the late Kevin Conroy's final vocal performance as the character. Without sales numbers and budget information, it's unclear just how much of a loss Warner Brothers Discovery suffered from the game's lackluster performance. Though Zaslav's comments confirm the profit hit was significant. Yeah, by most metrics and estimations from analysts, both the napkin math that we've done on stream and then also what people that really know what they're talking about in the industry analysis. Yeah, there you go. Brilliant, Luke. But with industry analysts, they've looked at it and they estimate that this thing probably lost a couple of $100 million, which is significant, certainly. So it's all just pretty devastating no matter which way you cut the pie and slice the cake. It's all just bad. But I think that the long-lasting effect of it is, for one, I think the game had, maybe the lessons to learn is that the game had too long of a marketing cycle, and they went back and forth too much on what the game actually was. They initially were pitching it as, look, it's a Rocksteady game, get excited. People got excited. And then they go, oh yeah, and it's live service. People got disappointed and upset. And then they pull back, they delay the game by a year, and they're like, actually, it's still a Rocksteady game. And yes, it's live service, but it's a Rocksteady game, and there's going to be tons of free content, and we're very pro-consumer with it, blah, 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 blah. And it ended up that while technically it had the most minutes of cutscenes of any game they've ever made, the overall story was extremely minimal. And even stuff like when they introduced the Joker, you remember when they were saying, yeah, so Harley, like, her reaction to the Joker is going to be really interesting for fans to see, because, you know, she has her own Joker that she's struggled with and that she's got a relationship with that, you know, resolved itself, let's just say. And so seeing a new Joker is going to be really interesting for her, because it's going to really call into question a lot of those feelings. And in the game, when the Joker shows up, there's like a 3.5 minute cutscene, and she doesn't say a word to the Joker, if I recall correctly. She just like passively acknowledges his presence, and that's it. Like across the board, it was just, it felt very, very misleading. So I just think in general, it was just a swing and a miss across the board. And then as a live service game, you know, as a narrative game, it fails. As a single player, it certainly fails as a single player game. And then as a live service game, it also just fails because it's the amount of content was so lackluster, and even the season 1 update has just left it totally wanting. And it's just unbelievable that they thought that this was going to be enough. And now if we look at the player numbers, I would wager it's going to back this up. Yeah, they're under 100 players in the game, and this is globally through Steam. You can see season 1, they peaked at about 3,000, and within just a few days, it was plummeting again. And now you see just ridiculously poor player numbers. But this is what happens when you have no content for a live service game, when you try to pitch it as a narrative game, and the narrative fans are pissed because not only do you do stuff in the narrative that's just gross, like having characters piss on the corpses of other characters, it's just across the board a mess, and they're reaping the consequences of it. So maybe they can dig themselves out of it somehow, you know, maybe after like 4 more seasons or something, it gets good enough. But the fact that we waited months, well, not months, it was a month for the season 1 update, and it was so lackluster, and then the final boss fight's just another reskin, for Brainiac. It makes me really question their abilities to get content out in any significant way. So I do not expect this to magically fix itself. I personally expect that support for the game will probably end by the end of the year. And, thank you players for your wonderful support, but we've decided to move on from Suicide Squad and start working on the next adventure, or whatever they're going to say. So that's my expectation. He took my thing.